Mobile games are almost all terrible. When you think mobile games, you think anti-consumer business practices, unoriginality, and boring gameplay. But there's one mobile game that gets the jump on all of them, and it's a seemingly insignificant game that goes by My Singing Monsters. But what about this game is so enticing to me to the point where I made a 50-minute video just to sing my praise of it, and this one just to do the same thing. How could a mobile game be one I like so heavily and obtain such a dedicated community? There's something about this game that brings in creativity, not only from its developers but its fan base, that use the game as their way to make some truly exceptional works. Well, I think I'll finally answer myself this question, along with explaining to people unaware as to why My Singing Monsters is the best mobile game. I first discovered the game as a kid. At this point, it was far from the first mobile game I had played, but there was always something special about it to me. The basic idea of My Singing Monsters is to put a spin on this overdone genre you may have heard from games like Monster Legends. I think we can all acknowledge that there isn't much you can do to differentiate yourself in a sea full of games that are basically the same, but MSM was able to do it by changing just one aspect, which is by giving it a unique sense of reward for breeding monsters, and that's the fact that obtaining a new one adds a new sound to the island's song. But this reward wouldn't be rewarding if the songs weren't good, but luckily they aren't just good, but great. The music in MSM is very unlike anything else, and I think it's what makes it so charming. It perfectly blends that goofiness with legitimately good compositions, and I think it's that special goofiness that attaches me to it. Let's take a look at Furcorn. The design does a very good job at meshing these conflicting feelings like sadness, goofiness, creepiness, and cuteness, and the sound that it makes blends all of these so well. And speaking of designs, all of them share that same basic idea of Furcorn, which is to look weird and creepy while also being cute and friendly at the same time. And they do a very good job at it. But back on track, I feel like those designs are a decently big part as to why the music succeeds. One of the fan-favorite songs is Woodland Island, which is one of my personal favorites, and is genuinely amazing. But I feel like another reason as to why it's so well liked is because it's the weirdest island of the game, with the weirdest designs and the weirdest sounds. There is quite literally a robot who says eyes, ears, nose, toes over and over again, and it somehow works really well with the song. So I guess I'm saying the music is very anti-meta, and as such produces a unique sound, while also not being so anti-meta that it still can't appeal to a wider audience. I mean, this especially makes sense when you put into consideration that only 2 songs are not in the time for 4-time signature, and other boring music theory stuff, but if I want to make any actual progress onto why I like the music so much, I feel as if I should analyze my personal favorite island in the game. This is the first island of the game to introduce the air element, and as such we get a considerable batch of new monsters, most of which being bird-like, but some of them straying into upper territory. Out of all these new monsters, the most important is undoubtedly Quibble, who plays throughout the entire song, playing the same melody, but with the appropriate note changes to indicate the changed tone of the song. The song starts with Dandy Doo, and after its solo, the song continues with Tweedle, Mammoth, Webbox, and more exploding, and honestly one of my favorite transitions of quiet and small to big and bombastic. I'd also like to note how perfectly Quibble, Bogart, and Thumpy synergize with each other, each of them producing a lovely beat. But now we go on to the next part of the song, which is clearly more serious now, with Mammoth and Quibble producing lower sounds, while we get to hear the wondrous whistling of Sponge. But that's not all, as later on more monsters go into the fray. Seriously though, Ma, Toejammer, and Webbox playing together on this island is one of my favorite things. Though Furcorn and the next part makes it clear that the song has yet to go low enough. And the song takes a weirdly sad approach, which works far better than it has any right to, with it and Bogart selling its serious tone, and having the Dipsters show up halfway through working so well. Hell, the Dipsters in general are absolutely brilliant in Cold Island, fulfilling a similar role to Quibble and Bogart in setting the island's tone. But then we get asked if it's cold outside by the Wordos, and I cannot believe I've gone this long ignoring how much the Wordos improve the song. While I may have an opinions on each set of Wordos, the Cold Island ones are easily my favorite. Magpie works so well with Tweedle and Webbox, and I'm a sucker for Talker's deep voice that perfectly gets the feelings you'd have when being cold. After this intermission, though, we get to the last part of the song, the which is a repeat of Furcorn's part, and I'm not complaining about that one bit. Now though, you may be wondering why. Why did I spend so much time talking about one song? Well, it's because doing so would allow me to describe to you the general tone and feel that pretty much every song in the series has. If you liked what you heard of Cold Island, then that in and of itself I believe is enough of a reason to get the game yourself. And if you aren't convinced that the music is consistently good yet, then I'd suggest watching my video where I rank every song to get a general idea. But that video is a bit outdated now, so I'll talk about every song that wasn't included in it. Water Island has finally received the Willows, and they're pretty boring. The best part of Water Island will always be the Dipsters and Wobox, though these two didn't really stand a chance of competing for my attention. Earth Island also got the Willows, and they're great. Not as good as Plant and Cold Island's versions, but still amazing. Talker's voice is even deeper now, and while I heavily dislike Stewart's voice in Air Island, I think it works far better here. Firehaven added the Dipsters, and while being pretty disappointing, were still implemented well, and Gobbleguard never fails to make me laugh. They also added them to Fire Oasis, and my opinions on them are mirrored. Light Island is easily the worst island in the game, and I still like it. Flores is a great intriguing design, Boskus is easily at its best here, and Fiddlement is highly relaxing on the ears. In terms of problems though, the song is highly repetitive. Kanya playing for the entire song gets so annoying. There's no sort of drumming monster, which takes away from a lot of the song's potential, and none of the monsters added much of anything. The song sounds the exact same in the first update as it does in the last, and that's not a good thing. Bone Island for the longest time was just a song I thought was pretty good, but it's grown on me so much, and a huge part of why is because of Fangor, a monster I don't usually like but works so well here. Though it does have some problems. Dunchaz is too loud, it heavily distracts from Fangor's na-na-na, and when Pekanda speaks I want to pull my ears out. Continent is a lot better now with Tiawa, and I'm glad it's finally made Pom-Pom's part less desolate. Cloud Island is a lot better too with Tiawa. I feel like its inclusion helped me forget about some of the song's shortcomings. Okay, here's the new tier list. Why isn't there a collect all button? It astounds me that you could just casually add the feature to your inferior prequel game, but not add it to your main game, in which it's a feature that's actually needed. I went from spending a couple of minutes a day in MSM to spending far more than that, and most of that time is spent in an infuriating struggle to collect every coin, because the developers must have simply forgotten about giving the player an easygoing experience. I'm sorry, that's kind of mean. Hell, I feel it's one of the only quality of life issues present, and that in and of itself is a good thing. Anyway, I mentioned earlier how Dawn of Fire is a mostly inferior prequel, and while it's still a lot of fun, it lacks the charm of the original in so many ways. I mentioned how long it can take to collect everything in MSM, but in Dawn of Fire, collecting everything isn't even fun. It's just tedious and boring, and while the songs are excellent, they're not enough to carry the experience, since it takes way too long to get the reward I want, even after Update 2.0 made it easier. Next, I want to talk about the prismatics in Dawn of Fire, which, while seeming like a good idea, ended up not being so when it became clear that designing them, unlike rares and epics in the main game, would take so much time that they'd become the new stars of Dawn of Fire, which is extraordinarily lame, especially since the designs are nowhere near as good as the rares and epics, and just like them, add nothing to the song whatsoever. Like, the prismatics ended up having such a stupidly large influence that it took a year for them to make another monster. Finally, though, I want to discuss the pay-to-win argument, and here I don't believe it stands. Although it most certainly did for Dawn of Fire until they released Update 2.0. Back on topic, I feel that despite the game having a slow start, one slow enough to be held up to genuine criticism, I feel as if that doesn't translate to the game aching at you to spend money. The only scummy parts of the games are the absurd cost of keys, of which you can get without paying for them, but it's still kind of ridiculous. A lot of the game highlighting the overpriced paid option for the island skins, which doesn't come across too well when dumb kids are your target audience. Also, the ads are extremely annoying, even if that doesn't become the case until you unlock Cold Island. But by that point, you've made it far enough to the point where you probably wouldn't mind putting $1 into the game to remove them anyway. So despite having some anti-consumer business practices, I believe this is one of the most pro-consumer mobile games, and that alone deserves praise, no matter how small. Pretty much every time you hear the words fandom, fanbase, or community, you get this odd sense of dread. But that's because you're purposely looking at the worst parts of them, and while the worst in a fandom can sometimes heavily eclipse others, I feel like judging each fandom on whose worst is truly the worst is a flawed way of judging a fandom overall. If you were to use this method to MSM though, the worst you'd really get is cringy kids, but every fandom has those. Even the fandoms that shouldn't have kids in them. Man, parenting has really gone down the drain. What's cool though is that since the worst parts of this fandom are especially easy to ignore, it allows you to realize just how much people care about this game. I've been watching several videos from MSM fans, and I've grown to appreciate the community and respect the talent in it. I'll talk about some of my favorite creators first, and then I'll go on to talking about my personal favorite. Here I'd like to start with MPG, quite possibly the only YouTuber I watch who uses exaggerated faces on their thumbnails. This channel is sort of like a news channel for the game. He's the one I come to whenever a new update comes out. He's also has these discussion videos, where he talks about how the game can be improved, and to have someone who loves the game but is genuinely willing to criticize it is a breath of fresh air. He's also the one who posts the songs in the game too, since somehow the official YouTube channel hasn't done that yet. One of the first people I discovered in the community was Logan Peters, and he makes very well-made videos, either expanding upon existing islands, or in one case his own. And for that one specifically, you can just feel the amount of passion put into it. Wabats was probably especially disappointed when it was discovered that Fire Islands would be ending with Oasis, so she decided to have a new goal of expanding on the concept and doing so very well. Another series she started was making more ethereal islands, and given how those were my favorite as a kid, you could probably imagine my excitement upon seeing them. Raw Zebra is just straight up making an MSM fan game. While my own videos require me to have a myriad of talents, I can't even begin to imagine how talented you'd have to be to make something like this, entirely on your own too. You'd have to be a good composer, animator, artist, and a programmer. Like, this is easily as ambitious as it gets. Out of all of his songs, though, my favorite is certainly Cotton Paradise. It's just relaxing. Which is why I hate it that he asked the island for no good reason. And speaking of Cotton Paradise, though, Waddle's excellent sound is voiced by Troublestroke, who makes these really good vocal covers of songs from the games. And it just makes me wish that I could sing. Quinkles216 makes fan songs with his own set of monsters, and he does a really good job at doing it. Withering Woods and Feral Fortress especially sound great, and you can tell how drastically he's improved as an animator and artist in Withering Woods Remade. SylverStar MSM is unfortunately an extremely small channel, which sucks given his catchy melodies and gorgeous artwork. The Monster Explorers makes orchestral arrangements of songs from the game, and he's so good at doing it that I can't even pick a favorite. He's been inconsistent with uploading, but when he gets back to his groove, I'll be very excited. Alright, now we can finally get on to my favorite, Sebass87, I hope I pronounced that right. Something unfortunate though is that before I discuss his excellent works, I must first discuss, drama. Yes, I know he abused/harassed his girlfriend, and no, I won't defend that. I think we can all agree that it's a bad thing to do and goes beyond simply being a mistake. With that said, there's unfortunately nothing we can do about it, even though I'm sure we'd want to. All I can do is hope that Sebass as a person will improve, and based on his decision to quit making YouTube videos, he seems to understand the weight of what he did and will hopefully become a better person as a result. If you've ever been a victim of abuse or harassment, I couldn't be more sorry. Hopefully we can use this experience as a growing pain for the community so something like it doesn't happen again. Don't harass Sebass over this, and absolutely do not harass the victim. It does nothing. So while I was editing the video, Sebass decided to delete his channel, and all I can say is that it was an extremely stupid decision to make. While I have my theories as to why he could have done it, either because he got caught doing the same awful actions again, or that he wanted to off himself, I still feel like to make it so no one can even view the videos he's made, along with all those years of effort, is something I struggle to even comprehend. With the channel deletion too, people have tried to archive his videos, but a sea of passionate haters have decided to mass dislike and comment all of these re-uploads until the re-uploaders delete the videos after no longer being able to tolerate the harassment. And to this, all I can say is, how does it feel? How does it feel to be such a hypocrite? Also, on the topic of art preservation, all art should be preserved, period. And that's why I believe the re-uploaders are well within their right to do what we're doing, even if we can say that we disagree with the actions of the original artist himself. With that out of the way, Sebass is probably my biggest inspiration in terms of the music I make, and if you want to hear some of that, it's on my second channel, Sebass has had about 2 big projects, the first of which being the Elemental Islands, in which he takes one of the 12 Celestials and makes a song around them. Unfortunately, the channel deletion means that they'll most likely be completely lost to time, and I wish I was joking when I say that I legitimately lose sleep over the fact that I'll never be able to listen to Woodland Island again. But in speaking of that song, it beautifully sells the lonely feeling of being trapped in a forest. Although Mine Island, Stardust Island, and Surge Island are also excellent, with Giger's sax solo in Surge Island being one of the catchiest things I've ever heard. The second project he's done, though, and the more interesting idea overall, was to create a new class of monsters called the Harmonious, and to make 5 different songs for them. Along with being really good songs, these are also very well animated, and it has a far more cinematic feel than the MSM games, while still having that handcrafted feel that makes YouTube videos so appealing. My favorite Harmonial is probably for Tessa, since she's so cute, although Clarimpus, Uvok, and Lidokar are also amazing, and my favorite song is either Harmonious, Cavern Alternate, or Abyss, of which will become more relevant later. Overall, while I'd say that he's most likely a bad person, I'd still say that I have a deep respect for him as an artist, as guilty as I feel for saying that. Hopefully, leaving YouTube will allow him to not repeat the awful actions of his past while giving him a shot outside of YouTube. Oh yeah, right, I mentioned that he'd be the last creator I'd talk about. But I was actually lying, since while there's fan content, there's fan content of fan content. And my favorite example of this is XX808XX, who makes fan content of Sebass's fan content. Along with being a really good song, Harmonious Abyss also perfectly describes what this fandom feels like, a never-ending abyss. And the craziest part too is that Nate makes really good videos. Right now he's animating Harmonious Volcano, a song that Sebass had failed to finish animating before his departure from the site, and these animations are really good. But before this too, he did really big projects like reanimating Harmonious Abyss with his own fan-made Rare Harmonials, and after he finishes his current project he plans on animating Harmonious Oasis, which was the first Harmonious song, and as such wasn't animated. But that's not even it, as he also plans on eventually animating Harmonious Cavern Alternate and Crystal Ruins, 2 songs in Sebass's now defunct fan kit that he neither animated or released on YouTube. What sucks though is that Nate has been getting a lot of hate as of late for simply using the Harmonials. Nate has not publicly endorsed the actions of Sebass and just appreciates what he has made. Also, while he may technically be milking the Harmonials, that statement implies that he's doing so effortlessly and without soul, which couldn't be farther from the truth. What's crazy too is that he's not even the only channel that makes these. The channel Plasma Guy made a really good Harmonious Volcano animation, but that's not even all, as Sebass is far from the most popular creator to make fan content of, and I think Cosmospeaks' excellent Healy hideout is evidence of that, as half of the monsters in that song belong to Quigplaz. After I explained all of that too, I think you could tell why I love this fanbase so much, as everyone in it just has this sense of passion. And in that sense, it's a community that I heavily relate to, and given how I've had hardly bad experiences with it so far, I'd say the community is just another reason to get into MSM yourself. While these parts of the video would be me telling you why I made said video, I feel like I made it very clear already. Even after making it though, I feel that while I did a good job at explaining why someone would like the games, I feel like I failed to explain why so many people, including myself, are obsessed with them. I really should have grown out of this game, but I just didn't. There's something that's just so comforting after realizing you're growing older and the fear surrounding that, to just play a game that's so innocent and fun. Having something that can help me forget about those fears, I think is why the fandom is so passionate, because we'd hate to forget our sense of childlike wonder. This game makes me feel like a kid again, and having just a couple of minutes a day to do so makes me so happy. Thank you so much, Big Blue Bubble. You ended up creating a game that unintentionally and surprisingly became one of the biggest parts of not only mine, but the lives of so many others. Man, that ending got way more emotional than I was expecting, and I wish I was joking when I said that I legitimately cried during one of the times I read it out loud. This video may not have meant much to most, but to me I couldn't be more happy that I made it. Although I would say to not expect much more MSM videos from me, as well I have a couple of ideas. It'll definitely take me another year to act on them. Anyway, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you next week.